A designer handbag, a strawberry milkshake, one moment of cruelty caught on camera. When wealthy socialite Christine Blackwell humiliated a grocery store clerk in front of dozens of shoppers, she had no idea that her victim wasn't just any ordinary woman, and that karma was about to rewrite both their stories forever. Before we dive into this unbelievable story of instant karma, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. You won't believe how this unfolds. Trust me, you'll want to stick around until the very end. The twist will leave you speechless. Now let's get into it. Riverside Heights was the kind of neighborhood where perfectly manicured lawns competed for attention, where luxury cars lined the driveways, and where everyone knew everyone else's business. It was a place where wealth wasn't just displayed, it was flaunted. And nobody flaunted it quite like Christine Blackwell. At 35 years old, Christine had everything a person could want, or at least everything money could buy. She lived in a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion with her husband Robert, a real estate mogul whose face appeared on billboards across 3 counties. Christine's days were filled with yoga classes at the exclusive country club, shopping trips to designer boutiques, and planning charity galas where she could wear her most expensive gowns. Her social media accounts showcased a life of luxury, private jets, champagne brunches, and photographs with local celebrities. She had nearly 200,000 followers who watched her every move. But behind the perfect smile and designer sunglasses, Christine had a reputation. Ask anyone who worked in the restaurants she frequented, the salons she visited, or the stores she shopped at, and you'd hear the same stories. She was difficult, demanding, rude to anyone she considered beneath her social standing. She'd send meals back 3 times, complain about her hair color for hours, and speak to service workers like they were invisible. Her friends laughed it off as Christine being Christine, a perfectionist with high standards. But those on the receiving end knew it was something else entirely. It was cruelty disguised as class. On the other side of town, though still within Riverside Heights boundaries, lived a different kind of woman. Helen Porter was 42 years old, and if you passed her on the street, you probably wouldn't look twice. She wore simple jeans and comfortable sweaters, drove a 12-year-old Honda Civic that had seen better days, and kept her graying brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. For the past 2 years, Helen had worked as a cashier at Riverside Grocery Store, the large supermarket that serviced the entire community. Helen worked the early morning shifts and often stayed late, picking up extra hours whenever she could. She was raising 2 teenagers on her own, Danny, who was 16 and dreamed of going to college, and Grace, who was 14 and played violin in the school orchestra. Money was tight. Every dollar mattered. Helen's co-workers knew her as quiet but kind, the type of person who'd cover your shift without complaint or share her lunch if you forgot yours. She never talked about herself much. She just showed up, did her work, and went home. In a town obsessed with status, Helen Porter was practically invisible. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October when their worlds collided. The grocery store was packed with weekend shoppers stocking up for the week ahead. Helen was working checkout lane 3, scanning items with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Her feet ached. She'd already been standing for 6 hours. But she kept her professional smile in place, greeting each customer with genuine warmth. That's when Christine Blackwell walked through the automatic doors like she owned the place. She wasn't alone. She had 3 of her closest friends with her, all dressed in coordinated athletic wear that probably cost more than Helen's monthly rent. Their laughter echoed through the store as they grabbed a shopping cart, though they clearly weren't there for a serious grocery run. This was a social outing, a chance to see and be seen. Christine headed straight for the organic section, her voice carrying across the aisles as she loudly critiqued products. Too much sugar in this, too many carbs in that. Didn't they know she only ate sustainable, farm-to-table produce? Other shoppers moved out of her way, shooting irritated glances that Christine either didn't notice or didn't care about. She was in her element, performing for her friends and anyone else watching. After spending 20 minutes selecting a handful of items, sparkling water, organic kale, imported cheese, and some gluten-free crackers, Christine decided to use the self-checkout. It should have been simple, but when she scanned her first item, the machine beeped with an error. She tried again. Another error. Her perfectly made-up face twisted with frustration. "This is ridiculous," she announced to no one in particular. "Why is nothing in this store working properly?" One of her friends suggested asking for help, but Christine was already storming toward the regular checkout lanes, her designer heels clicking against the linoleum floor. She didn't get in line. She walked directly to Helen's register and pushed her way in front of an elderly man who'd been waiting patiently. "Excuse me," Helen said politely, "but there's actually a line, ma'am. I'll be happy to help you once I finish with—" "I don't have time for this," Christine snapped, dumping her items onto the conveyor belt. "Your self-checkout machines are broken. The least you can do is ring me up quickly." Helen's jaw tightened slightly, but she maintained her composure. The elderly man waved his hand, gesturing for her to go ahead. He was used to people like Christine. Helen thanked him apologetically and began scanning Christine's items. Everything was going fine until she reached the imported cheese. When she scanned it, the system showed a different price than what was marked on the package. "I need to do a quick price check on this," Helen explained. "It'll just take a moment." Christine's eyes narrowed. "A price check? Are you serious right now? The price is right there on the package. Can't you read?" "I understand, but when there's a discrepancy, store policy requires—" "I don't care about your store policy," Christine interrupted, her voice rising. "I have places to be. Important places. Just enter the price and let me leave." Helen remained calm, though her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the phone to call for a price verification. Around them, other customers were starting to stare. Some were pulling out their phones. In today's world, drama like this rarely went unrecorded. "You know what your problem is," Christine continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're slow. You're incompetent. How hard is it to scan groceries? This is literally the easiest job in the world, and you still can't do it right." Helen's face flushed, but she said nothing. She dealt with difficult customers before, but something about Christine's tone, the casual cruelty, the complete lack of basic human decency, made her chest tighten. Still, she needed this job. She had bills to pay and kids to feed. So she waited silently for the price check, refusing to engage. A stock clerk arrived within 2 minutes and confirmed the lower price on the shelf. Helen adjusted it in the system and continued scanning. But Christine wasn't done. She'd found a target, and she was enjoying herself. "Look at you," Christine said, gesturing at Helen's uniform. "This is what happens when you don't apply yourself in life. When you don't have ambition or drive. You end up scanning groceries at 40-something years old, wearing a polyester vest and taking orders from everyone. Is this really what you dreamed of becoming?" Helen's co-workers at the other registers had stopped what they were doing. The store manager was making his way toward them. But before anyone could intervene, Christine's friend appeared holding 2 strawberry milkshakes from the store's small cafe. "Got your favorite," the friend said cheerfully, handing one to Christine. Christine took it, still focused on Helen. As Helen bagged the final items, she reached across the register to hand Christine her receipt. In that moment, Helen's arm accidentally brushed against Christine's designer handbag sitting on the counter. It was barely a touch, but Christine looked down and gasped dramatically. "Are you kidding me right now?" Christine shrieked. "Do you see this?" "You got your disgusting hands on my bag." Helen looked at the bag. There was the faintest smudge, barely visible on the cream-colored leather. "I apologize," Helen said quietly. "I didn't mean to. This bag costs $5,000. $5,000. That's probably more than you make in 2 months, you pathetic nobody." The store fell completely silent. Everyone was watching now, phones held up, recording every second. And that's when Christine did something that would change both their lives forever. In a moment of pure, unfiltered rage, she grabbed her strawberry milkshake, pulled off the lid, and poured the entire thing over Helen's head. Pink liquid cascaded down Helen's face, into her hair, soaking her uniform. Whipped cream slid down her shoulders. The cold shocked her into stillness. She just stood there, dripping, as Christine slammed the empty cup onto the counter. "That's what you get," Christine spat. "Maybe now you'll learn your place." Christine's friends stood frozen, their faces pale. The other customers gasped. A child started crying. And through it all, Helen Porter stood perfectly still, strawberry milkshake dripping onto the floor around her feet. Her eyes closed as tears mixed with the pink liquid running down her cheeks. The store manager rushed forward, his face red with anger, but Christine was already walking away, her heels clicking toward the exit. "I'll be calling corporate about this nightmare of a store," she called over her shoulder. "That woman should be fired immediately." Helen slowly removed her vest, handed it to her manager, and walked toward the back room without a word. Behind her, customers were already posting videos online, their fingers flying across their phones. Within an hour, the footage had been shared thousands of times. By that evening, it had gone viral. The internet moved fast, and it was merciless. People shared the video with hashtags like justice and karma. They dug into Christine's background, finding her social media accounts, her charity positions, her husband's business. Comments flooded in from across the country. Thousands upon thousands of people expressing outrage at what they'd witnessed. How could someone be so cruel? How could anyone treat another human being that way? But then something unexpected happened. A local news reporter doing a follow-up story on the incident decided to learn more about the victim. Who was this Helen Porter, and where did she come from? What he discovered sent shockwaves through the story all over again. Helen Porter wasn't just a grocery store clerk. She was Helen Porter Montgomery, sole heir to the Montgomery manufacturing fortune. Her family had built their wealth over 3 generations, and when Helen's father passed away 15 years ago, she'd inherited everything. A fortune worth approximately $47 million. Helen had lived a very different life before Riverside Heights. She'd attended private schools, graduated from an Ivy League university, married her college sweetheart, and had 2 beautiful children. Her husband, Thomas, had been a successful architect, and together they'd built a life filled with love and purpose. They'd been passionate about philanthropy, quietly donating millions to causes they believed in, never seeking recognition or publicity. But 3 years ago, Thomas died suddenly from a heart attack. He was only 42 years old. Helen's world shattered. The grief consumed her. She fell into a deep depression, barely able to function. Her children kept her going, but she felt lost, disconnected from the privileged world she'd always known. Nothing felt real anymore. Nothing mattered. In her darkest moment, Helen made an unusual decision. She wanted to feel normal again, to feel useful, to be around people who didn't know her story or treat her differently because of her wealth. So she moved to Riverside Heights, bought a modest home, and applied for a job at the local grocery store. She didn't tell anyone who she really was. She just wanted to be Helen Porter, cashier, mother, regular person trying to get through each day. For 2 years, she'd worked at that store, and nobody knew. She still managed her family's foundation, still donated hundreds of thousands of dollars annually to local charities, homeless shelters, and school programs, all anonymously. But during her shifts at the grocery store, she was just another working mother trying to make ends meet. It gave her purpose. It made her feel human again. When the reporter broke this story, the internet exploded all over again. The woman Christine had called a pathetic nobody was worth more than Christine could ever dream of being. The woman Christine had humiliated for being just a cashier had donated more money to charity in 1 year than Christine had raised in her entire lifetime of fancy galas. The backlash against Christine was immediate and devastating. Within 24 hours, she'd been removed from every charity board she sat on. Her country club suspended her membership pending an investigation. Her husband's business partners began distancing themselves, with several major clients pulling their contracts, citing character concerns about the Blackwell family. Christine's social media, once filled with adoring comments, became a wasteland of criticism and anger. Her follower count dropped by thousands every hour. Friends stopped returning her calls. Invitations to exclusive events were quietly rescinded. When she tried to go to her favorite restaurant, the hostess told her they were fully booked for the foreseeable future. Christine Blackwell had become a pariah in the very social circles she'd once dominated. But it didn't stop there. Helen's attorney contacted Christine with formal legal papers. Assault charges had been filed. A civil lawsuit for emotional distress and workplace harassment was in motion. Security footage from the store, combined with the dozens of phone videos taken by customers, provided ironclad evidence. Christine's lawyer took one look at the case and advised immediate settlement. The local district attorney, seeing the public outcry and the clear evidence, decided to pursue criminal charges as well. This wasn't just about Helen anymore. It had become a statement about how society treated service workers, about accountability for the wealthy, about basic human decency. 6 months later, Christine's life looked completely different. Robert had filed for divorce, unable to handle the scandal and the impact on his business. Christine was forced to sell their mansion to pay mounting legal fees and the settlement with Helen. Her luxury cars were gone. Her designer wardrobe had been sold off piece by piece. She'd moved into a small apartment across town and taken a job at a call center, minimum wage, no benefits, no prestige. The woman who'd once mocked Helen for working retail was now experiencing it herself. Meanwhile, Helen had slowly stepped back into public life, but on her own terms. She accepted positions on several charity boards, but unlike before, she used her story openly. She became an advocate against workplace bullying and mistreatment of service workers. She founded the Thomas Montgomery Foundation in her late husband's name, specifically designed to support retail and food service employees who faced harassment, providing legal aid and counseling services. When Helen was asked in an interview if she'd forgiven Christine, her answer surprised many people. "I forgive her as a human being," Helen said calmly. "We all make mistakes. We all have moments we're not proud of, but forgiveness doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences. What happened to me happens to service workers every single day, and they don't have the resources I have to fight back. That's why this matters. That's why the lawsuit proceeds. Not for revenge, but for change." The most shocking development came 8 months after the incident. Helen's foundation had grown rapidly, helping hundreds of workers across the state. They needed staff, and Helen made an unexpected decision. She offered Christine Blackwell a job. Not a fancy position, not a cushy desk job, an entry-level position helping coordinate support services for harassment victims. Minimum wage, no special treatment. Christine's first instinct was to refuse. Her pride couldn't handle it, but she had no other options. Her reputation was destroyed. No one else would hire her. She was drowning in debt. So humbled in a way she'd never experienced before, Christine accepted. Working at the foundation forced Christine to face what she'd done in a direct and painful way. She answered phones from people sharing their own stories of being humiliated at work. She helped file reports and connect victims with lawyers. She sat in support groups and listened to retail workers describe the verbal abuse they endured daily. She saw herself in every story of cruelty, every tale of a customer who treated them like they were nothing. It was the hardest work Christine had ever done, and not just because the pay was terrible and the hours were long. It was hard because it held up a mirror to who she'd been. Every day she was confronted with the reality of how she treated people throughout her entire privileged life. And every day she had to choose whether to actually change or just go through the motions. Helen watched from a distance, never interfering, never making things easier. She'd given Christine an opportunity, but what Christine did with it was up to her. Some people thought Helen was being cruel. Others thought she was being too generous. But Helen understood something that few others did. Real redemption isn't given, it's earned. And it requires action, not just words. A year after the Milkshake incident, a journalist asked to interview both women for a piece about forgiveness and accountability. They sat in Helen's office, the first time they'd been in the same room since that day at the grocery store. Christine had changed. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple, practical outfits. The haughty expression had been replaced by something quieter, humbler. The loud, demanding voice was now soft and measured. "I can't undo what I did," Christine said, her eyes downcast. "I can't take back the pain I caused Helen or the person I was for so many years. All I can do is try to be better. Every single day I have to choose to be better. Some days I fail, but I keep trying." Helen nodded slowly. "That's all any of us can do," she said. "We're all works in progress. Some of us just get forced to confront it more dramatically than others." The video of the Milkshake incident never disappeared from the internet. It became one of those moments that people referenced in discussions about privilege, kindness, and karma. It was shown in workplace harassment training sessions. It was discussed in college ethics classes. It sparked a broader conversation about how society treats service workers and the invisible people who keep our world running. Thousands of retail workers began sharing their own stories online, creating a movement that led to real policy changes in multiple states. Companies implemented stricter harassment policies. Some introduced hotlines for workers to report abuse. Training programs were developed to address customer behavior and employee protection. And at the center of it all were two women whose lives had been forever changed by one moment on a Saturday afternoon. Christine continued her work at the foundation, slowly rebuilding her character, if not her reputation. Helen continued advocating for workers' rights while raising her two children and managing her late husband's legacy. The strawberry milkshake that had poured over Helen's head that October day had been meant as the ultimate humiliation. But instead, it became a catalyst for transformation, not just for Christine and Helen, but for countless workers who finally felt seen, heard, and valued. Because sometimes karma doesn't just serve cold revenge. Sometimes it serves an opportunity for growth, change, and redemption. But only if you're willing to accept the lesson and do the work. Christine's designer handbag, the one she'd valued at $5,000, eventually ended up donated to a charity auction. It sold for $300. The stain had never quite come out, and that's how one moment of cruelty became a lesson the whole world needed to hear. Christine learned that your bank account doesn't define your character. Your actions do. Helen showed us that grace is stronger than revenge, but justice still matters. What would you have done in Helen's position? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're really dealing with. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, be kind.